how did you get introduced to FFL? How do you know those guys over there at FFL 320?
Yeah, good question. So I went to Bible college out that way in the Northwest Indiana / Chicago area.
Yeah.
And I'm many years removed. Like I was out that way 2005 to 2010, but made a lot of great friends over there. Mike Irvling is one of my close friends. He's actually from the Northeast, which is where I'm originally from. So we kind of connected down there. We had something in common from the Northeast. And even though I left the area back in 2012 to move back up to New Hampshire in the Northeast, Mike and I really just kind of kept in touch throughout the years. We text each other when the Red Sox are on or the Celtics or the Patriots, that type of thing. So it was last summer, I think it was June of 2020. He's from Maine, so he was traveling up through New Hampshire to go visit his family. So him and his wife double dated with me and my wife. I took a day off of work. Interesting story is, so my wife and then his wife are actually from the same school out in Chicago. So it's kind of weird how that happened. But yeah, we did a double date. It was good to kind of catch up with him and see him. I hadn't seen him in a while. And that's when he first started talking about FFL. He was trying to explain to me at the time he was still working for a corporate company as well. But a lot of the guys that he was hiring for sales was like leaving and going to FFL. When he was explaining to me some of the numbers they're doing a week, in my head, I'm like, there's no way. Like he was explaining to me that guys that he knew were doing like 10K a week in commission. And I was like, that's absurd. Like, that's insane. So he had let me know that he was looking into actually doing it. And me just being a good friend, I'll be honest, I had no intention of doing it because to me, it just kind of sounded one of those like multi-level marketing gigs. And I was like, hey, I've been there, done that. I'm probably all set. But just to him, because he's a good friend of mine, I was like, hey, I tell you what, you let me know how you do, and then I'll just kind of keep an eye on you, and then let me know how it goes, and I'd be interested in looking into it. And I kind of just left it at that. We parted ways. He went back out to Chicago. And then again, he was texting me, I think it was like November, December, like right around the holidays of 2020. And he was texting me, he's like, hey, I'm having some success part-time. I actually just put in my 2 weeks notice at the corporate job he was at. And that kind of hit me. I was like, all right, because I know Mike for a long time. Like he wouldn't just up and leave a job. He's not that type of guy. He's like, he'd only do it if it was actually working out. So then I started thinking, well, maybe this is actually real what he's talking about. But I still wasn't ready to get in yet. I was like, all right, I got to see what he's doing. So he got me plugged into the Facebook group. And I'm constantly scrolling on Facebook and I'm seeing Mike and then other guys I know like Caleb and Gabe and Matt Moores. I'm seeing all these guys posting pictures, putting up numbers. And I didn't even understand all of it. But I'm like, did they make that much? Like, is that what that means, AP? I was just intrigued for a while, like literally December, January, February. I'm like, man, this is crazy. And then I just got to the point where it's like, all right, well, I got to just check this out for myself because if they're really making that type of money and Mike is constantly texting me, showing me bank statements, I'm like, all right, I got to check this out then. So I asked him one day, I was like, hey, what do I got to do to get in the course? So he sent me the link. I worked like 50, 60 hours a week at my corporate job, but I'd stay up late at night instead of watching TV. I'd start studying the course. And then kind of the rest is history. I scheduled my test for March of 2021, passed it on the first try, and kind of went through contracting and then went from there. So I think my first day in the field I was a part-timer in April of 2021. So that's a little bit of my background and kind of how I got in here. So
you've been here for 7 months.
Yeah. So, I really count July as like my first like real month just because I was part-time in April. What I was trying to do was go every other weekend. At my corporate job, I was working like from 10 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. So I didn't have a ton of time, but I had every Saturday, Sunday off. So I got wife, 2 small kids. I was like, all right, well, I can't work every weekend because trying to be a dad and a good husband. So I try to like flip-flop. That was a disaster. And it didn't work for me at all. I had no momentum doing it that way. I think I went the entire month of April. I made 0 sales in April. I hit May doing that same schedule, every other weekend part-time. I think I made 2 sales and then one of them charged back. So not a whole lot of success. And then June came around and I was really struggling like mentally because seeing Mike and some of the guys that I knew having just great success, I knew that like, okay, there's got to be something I can do to kind of have that type of success. And at the same time, I was frustrated, didn't really believe in myself, didn't want to be at my corporate job anymore because I wasn't happy. But I was like in that catch 22 where it's like, all right, I'm not happy working, but I'm too scared to make the jump.
Yeah.
So I remember I took a vacation. My wife is from Chicago, so we took a vacation out that way where Mike and all those guys are just blowing it up. And we actually drove out to Chicago. I remember driving, and me and the wife had a lot of time to talk and trying to figure out like what we wanted to do. And she pretty much said like, you know what, if this is what you want to do, I believe in you. I think we can make it work. And I'll be honest, it was kind of her that kind of gave me that, I guess, the last nod I needed for me to just kind of like, make the jump, like take the faith. So when we got back from vacation in Chicago, I put in my 2 weeks notice at my job. And the day I put in my 2 weeks notice, my employer immediately let me go. Because again, he didn't want me around if I wasn't serious about staying there. So I was like, all right, well, now it's real now. So second week of July, I was full time on my own and ready to make some money. And that's kind of how it went. So.
Wow. So you went from this doesn't work at all, I'm just going to check this out on the strength of him being a good friend of mine, to I'm not having any success, but I believe in it enough that I'm going to quit my job.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I think, to be honest, I think what it was, it's because I knew Mike and those guys. I think if I hadn't known them, like, I'll be honest, if I was cold market, I'm not sure if I would have taken the leap, because sometimes when you don't know someone as well, it's like you think, well, maybe they're just extra good at sales, or maybe that's their niche, or whatever. But the fact that I knew them, it just like there's something about it that that's just stuck with me. I couldn't give it up just because I knew like there's got to be something I can do to make this work for me too. Because with all due respect to Mike, one of my best friends, I mean, I know like, hey, if Mike can do it, I can do it. We have the same background. I mean, he's not extra special to me, so.
Yeah, they're all just really good at copying and pasting.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
100%. I love how you said he was trying to explain it to me in the beginning. It's like, and that's how it starts off. Like, you're just trying to get somebody to listen, just trying to explain to them how this makes sense, because before you get here, like from the outside looking in, it just doesn't make sense because it contradicts everything that you've ever been taught.
Yeah.
So you talked about trying to work that part-time schedule to quitting your job. Walk us through that first month, that month of July, and maybe that month of August. What did it look like schedule wise? What did you see then that still has you here front and center on this call in October?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is just like the schedule. I think one of the things that I really had to rely on when I first quit my job and went all in is like I knew that, I mean, the only way this is going to work is I got to copy the people who came before me that were having success. And I will say that's probably one of the things that I guess gave me a little bit of comfort, even when I was unsure in myself, is I just knew that, look, I mean, if everyone else is doing dial day Monday, run all day Tuesday, Wednesday, dial day Thursday, run all day Friday, Saturday, that eventually just kind of doing that over and over and over again. I mean, I was bound to find people that would, that would listen, that would want the help. And again, not to mention, I mean, these are all warm leads. I mean, they all filled out the form. They all wrote the mailer, clicked on wrote all the questions on Facebook, whatever the type of lead it is. They all requested the coverage. So it would just be up to me to kind of get into a repetition to learn how to present it properly. So I'm not just messing up the sale, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of my early struggles came because I was terrible on the phone. I was nervous, wrecking the home, didn't know what I was doing. But again, some of that over time, you just get better and better. But I just made sure that I stayed plugged in. I treated it like a job. I mean, when I was working my corporate job, I had to show up Monday through Friday, working 50, 60 hours a week to make the salary. So I know working for myself for the first time, the scary part of it is like, okay, well, I'm not making any money at all, but wait a second, if I stick to the schedule and pretend like I'm working for somebody, then the money will follow. And that's really what I did. I just stuck to the schedule. I stayed plugged in all the time. I still do to this day. I mean, I do nothing but listen to trainings on a loop in my car. I call it like YouTube University. I mean, that's literally, I'm a big sports radio guy. I like my, Eminem and and Lil Wayne. I like that stuff, but honestly, like that doesn't make me money. So it's all nothing but YouTube University, and that's really what I stick to now. So
Yeah, it's no, it's 100% true. Um, man, so schedule and leads. You talked a little about whatever type of leads. What type of leads did you start with? But before you do that, it's funny how you early on was like, I'm just going to stick to the schedule and trick myself into working for, because if I was going to work, I wouldn't have this leeway that people struggle with. Honestly, when they come over, they have all this free time and they're like, well, I'm just going to do this and this. This can't be that hard. I'll just dial a little bit here and go write $10,000 a week. And it's not how it works. Then they're frustrated. But you knew early on. And I think the thing that a lot of people have to understand is that you really are working for somebody else, because there's a bevy of people depending on you, like
yeah.
the same way that they were when you went to work. So now it's shifted from working for this person that cuts your check to working for these people that legitimately depend on you, that somehow were near the bottom of the totem pole before, but now they're front and center, because those are the people that you have to answer to. And I think if a lot of people realize that in the beginning, then they wouldn't have so much trouble making that transition. So talk to us about leads in the beginning, because we'll just stay there, and then on the back end, I'll kind of dig into why I wanted to hear how you started lead wise, what you started with.
Yeah. So I started with final expense Facebook leads. I actually went through Happy Agent was the vendor that I chose to use. And then I mixed those in with the age mortgage protection leads from the CRM.
The 250 leads?
Correct. Yeah. The real
The
cheap
ones
leads.
that could be like 5 years old?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And I got a lot of, like everybody else I'm sure does. I mean, I got, I got a lot of rejection. And my corporate job, I came from I ran a call center. I was a manager at a call center. So I think my mistake going in initially is I thought, okay, well, I almost got too cocky. I'm like, oh, I'm going to crush this because I'm used to being on the phone, right? And then I was going in thinking like, oh, all these people are going to be happy to hear from me. And again, they all need the coverage. They ask for it, but you have to understand that people just don't want to be on the phone. So even for me going in, that was a little bit of a shock to me. Getting hung up on those $2.50 leads, and I don't have the house anymore, and that my husband already passed away. Those are some of the objections I would run into.
Yeah.
And even on the Facebook final expense, I would run into some of that, and I didn't know how to overcome objections. So that was how I started. And I was just, I think I bought my first week and part-time about $500 worth of leads. Again, that mix, I didn't make any sales. And then I just rinsed and repeated. I spent another 500. So now I'm at 1,000 on my lead bill. And again, I was going every other weekend. Didn't make any sale on that second batch either. And now it's like a little bit, I'm panicking. I'm calling Mike. I'm like, hey man, I just dropped $1,000 on leads and I got nothing to show for it. Like, what am I doing wrong? And then Mike was, got me, gave me some advice. He's like, I tell you what, the only way you're going to do it is you got to get through the 100 appointments. You got to get good enough on the phone. He sent me a bunch of YouTube videos to watch. And he's like, I tell you what, on your next lead order, I'll just match you. So then, okay, so how much are you willing to spend? Honestly, Mike, I could probably squeeze another like $250 out of me. So I did 250 and then he matched me at 250. And then from there, I'm into my third round of leads. And then I finally got a little bit of traction making one sale. It was off of one of the, again, aged $2.50 mortgage protection leads. I went in there, had no clue what I was doing. I was so nervous. I think I was sweating like crazy. And I remember going through the financial inventory, asking all the questions, but literally not even knowing like why I need to ask it. That's what Mike told me to do. So I'm like, all right. So I get to the end and I'm like, all right, let me just call my manager real quick, because I didn't know what to do. I didn't even know how to open up the e-app, to be honest. I was like, where do I go? So I tried to call him, and it was like, we're up in New Hampshire and there's some towns up here that just have no reception. So I go to call Mike and there's like no reception up here. So I'm like, hey, would you mind if I use your Wi-Fi? I got to call my manager. I'm brand new. And I just have a question. I want to make sure I'm putting you guys in a good position. So they were cool with that. And I finally got Mike on the phone, and long story short, he's like, yep, they're going to need, they're an older couple. He's like, honestly, I'd recommend Eagle Premier, equity protection. Here's what you want to do. So then I just, Mike was on the phone, on speakerphone, kind of helping them understand like what this was, because I didn't really know much about the product. And then he kind of walked me through the e-app and went from there. So that was my first sale, like 3 weeks in, on a part-time basis. So
good old copy paste.
yeah.
I think in 3 weeks is normal, because if you think about it, and then this is one of the conversations that I have with new agents when they start. If you start a new job, you're going to wait 3 weeks to get paid anyway.
Yeah.
But the instant gratification that comes along with FFL, people having so much success from day one, they almost get spoiled. I almost cringe when somebody goes out and crushes it their first week and sells $5,000, $7,000, even $3,000, because I know that that's not, I don't want to say that it's not real life, because it is real life, but I know that it's not the norm, and it's almost counterproductive for them and their growth trajectory at FFL, because the second week, when they don't sell anything, they're ready to quit.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it helped you appreciate things a lot better going through that first 3 weeks. And I just tell people flat out, your first 10 appointments, don't expect to make any money. And typically when you're new, as you've probably figured out, your first 10 appointments sometimes takes you that first full week, maybe a week and a half, because you're terrible on the phones. So that's good stuff. So what do you do now that has you on this call that you weren't doing in the beginning on the phone, posture wise, tonality, setup, and in the house, that helped you, or that's having you experience the success now that you were missing on before, aside from just not understanding what you were doing before?
Yeah. I think on the phone, like, so I was trying to memorize every excuse they would come at me. I was almost like trying to memorize like different responses for each of their objections, but that got me in trouble, because they would say something and I'm sitting there trying to find what to say, and then they're clicking on me. Whereas now, no matter what they say, it's literally the same response. Oh, perfect. That's actually why I called. And then I'll just kind of roll into my next point. And that's much easier for me to remember. Like, doesn't matter what they say, whether they say, I'm not interested, I already spoke to somebody, I didn't fill it out. I just say, perfect. That's exactly why I'm calling. As weird as that sounds, it's almost like it gives me just a second to get back on track, to get to the end of it. So I think on the phones, that was the big thing, just learning how to quickly have like a one phrase to overcome really anything they say. As far as in the home, I think I really struggled like the first couple of months, especially just not using or not understanding, I should say, the financial inventory and how that was going to create value. It was almost like I was going in there and just throwing numbers at them. Like, here's the quote, here's how much it would be. And in reality, the financial inventory is something that you want to paint a picture. You're painting a picture of the family's life. Why are you asking how much is your monthly income, or how much is the mortgage payment? So, the reason why I'm doing that is because, like, look, I mean, if you ever become disabled and even on disability, you're going to make like maybe half of your income. A lot of people are going to just barely pay the mortgage. If the mortgage is $2,000 a month, you make $4,000, something happens to you. Now you're only making enough money if you're the only working one to cover the mortgage. So where does your living expenses come from, or your food or whatnot? So I think it's just doing a better job. For me, it was getting a lot of help and understanding like how the financial inventory works, so I can paint that picture. So that way, when I'm presenting, like, all right, well, here's what you'd qualify for, here's how much it would cost, and here's what the coverage will do for you. It's making sense to the customer, understanding, like, okay, here's value here. This is why we need to move forward, and this is why we need this. So
yeah, it's spot on. I tell everybody those story problems that everybody hated in algebra, in middle school and high school, and now you understand why you had to figure those out, because here it's easy because it's the same variables over and over again. And I think one thing that that you just kind of glossed over, that a lot of people forget about, is they just make it transactional and present the policy, the coverage, and the numbers, and not talk to them while they're presented about what it actually does for them, because that's what they're buying. They're buying that peace of mind and what this is actually going to do for me. So I actually need to lean on it. Otherwise, it's just another bill.
Right.
for something that they turn on and off. And when they need the money, they're going to turn it off because you didn't take the time to explain to them why. So that, I mean, that's huge. So for anybody that may have missed it, go back and listen to it. But you have to kind of walk them through why you're suggesting what you're suggesting and what it actually does for them. Or you're essentially, you're just showing up, going through the motions. So Travis, I'm going to open it up for questions here. Just anybody that has any questions about your journey, things that you might be doing that maybe they're not privy to, or somebody that's new that just wants to know how. So anybody has any questions for Travis, just unmute and fire away.
I have a question, Travis. So when did when did everything really shift for you? I know you said you were starting part-time, and then you just jumped full, all full-time. When did it shift for you as far as like your appointments? Did you jump from like part-time 10 appointments to 40 appointments, 30, 40 appointments a week, or like how did that look? And then of course that's probably what transitioned you into the big numbers is the multiple appointments, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, it was just activity for sure. Because when I was part-time, and like I said, I wasn't good on the phones. I was trying to do it every other weekend. I mean, there would be some weekends I'd only have like 5 appointments for the weekend, and then 3 would no-show me, and then 2 would just say no thanks. And then I would get frustrated and start thinking, okay, I must be horrible at this. I'm like the worst agent in the world. I think I told Caleb one time when I was on the phone with him. When I went full-time, I slowly started getting up to that 30 appointments a week. I think my first couple of weeks in July, I was right around like 20 appointments. So it wasn't perfect, but it was a lot more than I was used to doing. And really, it was just more at-bats. I mean, the more times I got up to the plate, again, there was a few laydowns I found in there. Like I found people that were just like checks on their forehead. They're like ready to go. And I wouldn't have found those if I didn't have the right numbers, if that makes sense. Now I've got it to the point where, I'm at about like close to 30 a week. Last week I only did like 26, so I fell short of my goal, but it's like really close. It's usually like 30, in between 25 and 30 a week. And I just try to make sure that no matter what, I have that many appointments set. I heard Steve Giordano say this one time, and it really stuck with me. I used to stress myself out because I would make goals like income wise, like, all right, how much do I want to submit this week? Or how many apps do I want to write this week? But I was doing it all backwards. So Steve, who's like probably the Michael Jordan in our industry, right, for like production, he had said one time on a podcast that he doesn't make numbers goals. He makes like appointment goals, like how many appointments can he actually run? And that really resonated with me because like, I think what really helped me get from like July, where I only issue paid like $7,000, really struggling, August, like 12, and then I just exploded in September. It's just the appointment count. I just made sure that literally 4 days a week, I'm working like 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I'm just making sure I got my appointments up. And then over time, again, you're just finding laydowns. I'm learning to overcome some of the objections. And then with that came confidence. And now I know what I'm capable of. So, no longer am I doubting myself, I guess, when I'm walking into the homes. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Travis, you talked about the transition on the phone when you are dealing with objections. Everybody does the perfect. That's why I'm calling. And you said it was a way to reset what you're doing. Do you just keep on going with your phone script, or do you actually try to rebut their objection?
No, I literally just like for instance, if I'm talking to, let's say, Jane on the phone, and then Jane says like, oh, well, I'm actually not interested. I say, oh, that's perfect. That's actually why I'm calling. They just have me out in your area, and I just kind of really get back to wherever I left off in the call. And the way I see it is like, if they're going to hang up, that's fine. Then what I'll do is usually I'll door knock it one time, because I try to resolve every lead. To me, everyone's got to tell me at least no on the phone once, and then tell me no in person once. Like once that happens, then okay, lead is resolved. But that's what I'll do. But I think what you'll find is like, it's almost like they're not expecting you to come back that way. They're expecting you to kind of argue back with them on why they told you that they don't want you to come out, or whatever the reason is. And it's almost just like a pattern interrupt. So when you just say, oh, that's perfect, that's why I'm calling, and you just kind of roll into the next spot, a lot of the times I'll get those appointments booked, just like that. So I don't know if that helps.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah.
What else you guys got? Any more questions for Travis? Or we let him get back to his dial day? Cool. The usual suspects. So go ahead, Justin. Or you just unmuted X. You're muted. Justin, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right, cool. Yeah, Travis, I was just going to say, could you talk to us a little bit, for some newer agents, the importance of resolving these leads? I know when I first started, I didn't really understand the importance of it. So if you could kind of talk to us a little bit about that and how that's kind of changed for you, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the importance is so again, I think most people, again, they filled out the form, so they definitely they at least are requesting the information, and they definitely need the help. But I think a lot of people sometimes, they just don't want to be on the phone. They got, the car warranty people calling them, whatnot, that who knows? I mean, everybody and their mother's calling them. I think what was a turning point for me, so one time I called, it was a Facebook final expense lead from Happy Agent. And so I called her on the phone. She's 83 years old. So I try to get her on the phone. I'm trying to schedule the appointment, and she's like extremely rude to me. She just like hangs up the phone. So I dialed her right back. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to dial her right back for the second time. And I'm trying to set the appointment. Hey, Mary, you filled this out. The only reason why I'm calling is, and she wouldn't even let me get a word edgewise, and she just hangs up on me again. And there was one weekend that I didn't have very many appointments. So I remember Caleb talking to me saying, hey, again, white space is your enemy. Like, if you have gaps in your schedule, you got to do money making activities. So I literally just took a stack of leads that either hung up on me or I couldn't get a hold of. And I just plugged them in Road Warrior on a Saturday, because I only had I had 2 appointments on a Saturday, one in the morning and then one in the evening. So I'm like, all right, rest of the day we're door knocking, I guess. And I remember going to that one specific lady that hung up on me twice. She just didn't even let me get a word in. And so I went in, I hit the doorbell. It was one of those buzzer high-rise apartments. So I hit the buzzer, husband answers. He's like, hey, who is it? And I said, hey, it's Travis. I'm here for an appointment for Mary. And he's like, what appointment? I'm like, oh yeah, we have a life insurance appointment. Now keep in mind, we never set an appointment. I heard from Andrew Taylor, you got to act like you're supposed to be there. So that's what I did. I just acted like I was supposed to be there. And so then he buzzes me up. I'm like, okay. So I go right up the stairs. I get in the door, and they're the nicest people I've ever met in my life. They never mentioned that they hung up on an agent. Of course, I didn't bring that up. I didn't say, hey, I'm the guy you hung up on. But they didn't tell me they hung up on me, nothing. I sat down with her. There was literally no objections. I get through my financial inventory. She's like, yep, I definitely need this. She was 83. We're going through Eagle Premier. And I was like, hey, and again, I'm still new. So I'm showing her 10 grand in coverage. She's like, well, can I get more? I'm like, well, yeah. So I bump it up to 20. She's like, well, what about more? I'm like, well, the max they'll do is 30, but this is going to be, I think it was $400 and something a month. I'm like, is this okay? She's like, oh yeah, no problem at all. And I'm like, okay. So I remember writing up the app, instant approval in the home, gave him the card, all that good stuff, took a picture, clients for life. I remember walking out of that appointment, and I didn't even realize how much the AP was. I think it was over 5K in AP. And so when I did the math, I'm like, holy cow, I called Mike. I'm all excited. I submitted the sale, but it just kind of went to show me that worst case scenario, if you're trying to resolve every lead, the worst thing that's going to happen is they'll tell you no twice, once on the phone and then once at the door. And then that's okay. Then you did your job. But in some scenarios, you'll get that. You'll get people that you just couldn't get a hold of on the phone, or didn't want to talk to a telemarketer. But again, they still need the coverage. They need the help. And if you show up at their door, most likely they're going to let you in, and you can do your job. So.
Perfect. Thanks, man. I think we all needed to hear that. it just goes to show that, you know, we call these people all the time, they don't pick up. It doesn't mean it's a bad lead, you know? So if we could go the extra mile a little bit there, it just goes to show that example there, that you can still help the family out. So thanks.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, it's never crowded at the extra mile. Never ever crowded. And then you had to understand that these people, especially when you're dialing final expense, they have years. She's 83, so she's qualified for those calls since she was 55, before do not call list and all that stuff. So she's got some years of experience with telemarketers and things of that nature. So it doesn't surprise me that she didn't want to talk on the phone.
Yeah.
But like you said, nicest people in the world when you get face to face, even the people that, yeah, that's the way it happens. The rudest people on the phone are the easiest people to sell in the house. So good stuff. Any more questions for Travis before we let him go? All right, Travis.
Thanks, Travis.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're welcome.
Appreciate you jumping on. Parting shots, something that you would tell yourself if you were talking to Travis coming into the business. What's that conversation sound like? Or what's that one nugget that you would give Travis back in April from Travis in October?
Honestly, I would look back at myself like, hey, don't give up. Follow the system. You don't got to reinvent the wheel. It's already a proven system. So just don't give up, follow the system, and it's going to work for you. If you do the right thing, like meaning you work hard by the system, and then you do the right thing by the customer, making sure that you're really genuinely trying to help them, the field will owe you. The numbers will end up working itself out. And so that's what I would tell, April Travis for sure.